Hay nagtutugis naman mo. Malaran. Hay nagtutugis naman mo. Ha? Yung mix yun. Yung nagkagsala. Master presentation kita tapos naman mo. Hindi ito ba pipis naman? Yes naman, nagawin tugis naman.
Yes, yeah. So, Tumukong, I'm Director of Biosecurity, Department of Agriculture, Forestry, and Ministry of Agriculture. Okay, thank you. Okay, those still at the back, please take a seat. Yeah, good. I've got most. It's quiet. Getting quiet. Okay. Good afternoon. Welcome everybody. This is the last stretch, as you know. This session is a great opportunity for our other clusters to share some of their lessons learned today, to give us a good understanding of what they've picked up on. But it also sets the context for getting a good understanding of some of their inter-cluster coordination issues or aspects they had to come to deal with and understand and work through amongst themselves, but also with the logistics and the NDMO as well. So we're going to have run this session this afternoon. We'll have a bit of an introduction by each of the panel members, but we'll also then have some questions amongst the panel members, and then we'll open up the questions to the audience as well, and then we'll do a bit of a closing wrap as well. So first of all, I'd like to introduce our panel members today, starting off with the Director of Biodiversity at the Ministry of Agriculture, Timothy Tulmokon. Please welcome him. Next to Timothy, we've got the Director of Finance and Administration at the Ministry of Education, John Gideon. Please welcome John. John's got many years of experience, 18 years of experience in project development, management and planning. So just welcome John. Our health sector is represented by the Director of Health Planning, Viron Tuvu. So welcome as well. Got many years of experience and just recently put together the health sector strategy as well. So, and he's our government lead on the health cluster as well. Next to Viron is our current acting director of the Ministry of Department of Mines, Geology and Water Resources. It's Water Resource Manager Eric Samming. So Eric's been, thank you. Eric's been involved in the water sector for 16 years, and many of you also know he's a lead advocate for celebrating Vanuatu's World Water Day, I believe. So make sure you support him next time round. And last of all, but not least, we have our shelter specialist and co-lead on the shelter cluster, Xavier Ganu from IFRC. So, and Xavier has significant experience in this area and has come from a hot sort of environment from Haiti. So he's bringing all that knowledge across too. So please welcome our panel members again. Thank you. All right, just to get things started and get everybody here into the mood of things and getting you receptive to what's going to be discussed up here, can I get everyone to stand up quickly, please? Now, an important part of the work that we do is to work to some sort of standards and parameters. And one of those key documents or one of those standards is the sphere standards. Now, if you haven't heard of that, can you sit down? Okay, that's really encouraging to see. I think we're all very pleased as cluster leads and coordinators up to here. Now, I'm just going to delve in a little bit more. A bit of a Simon Says here. I'm going to see how many people here know what the water requirements are for children in schools. If you think it's 2 litres per day, raise your left hand or left arm. If you think it's 3 litres a day, raise your right arm. If you think it's 5 litres a day, put your hands on your head. So I'll give you a couple of minutes to make a choice. Okay, everyone made that decision? Okay, the correct answer is 3 litres. So everyone else sit down. Everyone else sit down. Who remains standing? Who remains? I was hoping to see at least 2 clusters. Look, what about you? No, same thing. I was expecting at least to see the WASH and the health cluster, or the education cluster, but there we go. So some homework for everybody. Anyway. All right, let's kick off. We'll kick off with our first cluster to give a short presentation of their lessons learned, and we'll ask Xavier to take the floor.
Thanks. Good afternoon. First, all I will say is it's part of this document with a lesson learned report for the shelter cluster, and all that has been discussed with the public work department is a cluster lead. First thing is the shelter cluster has a little bit different story from other clusters because it was not existing before PAM in Vanuatu system. But NDMO called IFRC Pacific Office 3 weeks before PAM to look at installing a shelter cluster for preparedness. And when PAM arrives, the day before, NDMO called IFRC Office to install a cluster for the response. That we did. To give an idea on the scale of the response, collective response, the initial planning was to support 13,500 households, and today is 24,000 households who have been reached with emergency shelter material. So I think it's a good indicator how it works for PAM response. On key lesson shared by partners, first one, recognition of a quick establishment of a shelter cluster and clearly identified within the NDMO structure to reach the same level of coordination than the other cluster. Really important for inter-cluster coordination. Second things, there was a really good level of cooperation, openness, sharing of resources, flexibility between all the different cluster partners. And I think that was really result-oriented, and it explained this successful shelter response. There was a really good link between the shelter cluster and the IDPs working group, who became the CCCM camp coordination camp management working group, and it helps a lot to facilitate the prompt, proper, and good closure of evacuation center. So really good cooperation to do this aspect. There was also a good link with protection clusters, with, for example, protection clusters. Given some list of vulnerable people who have been missed for shelter cluster partners to come back to support these gaps. Also with the WASH cluster, and for example, one good example of inter-cluster coordination was the shelter cluster vulnerability assessment, who was looking at shelter, but also WASH, protection, food, and key findings have been discussed through the different clusters, and I think it was really good to agree on what is the situation. On the key issues and recommendation, first thing, the shelter cluster partners have some delays in importing relief items, so tarpaulin, toolkits, and so on, who delays the response. So I think it's one of the issue we already discussed on logistic cluster. The question of governance of the structure of the shelter cluster, because shelter cluster has some specificity. One of them is that we always look to see how humanitarian shelter action are contributing to long-term housing issues. So it means that even in terms of preparedness, we need to look at how both parts of the equation are matching together. We're sure that what we do in emergency is contributing to recovery of the people to live with long-term housing issues. For that, we are in discussion to have to set up a strategy group who would be co-led by PWD and DLA, who would bring on the table representatives of Red Cross, Red Crescent, NGOs, international and local, UN, IOM, but also civil society, church group, council of chief, protection clusters, and so on, to bring every stakeholder around the table to discuss together on how all these stakeholders of the Nivan culture and society and relief workers will agree on moving forward for this response, but also for the preparedness aspect of the shelter cluster. There was a good thing because even there was no shelter cluster before, there was a quick decision by the government of Vanuatu to nominate PWD to be the cluster lead. So helping us on the time of PAM response to discuss with them on installing this coordination mechanism and to discuss with them on how to conduct all these meetings and how to liaise with all these stakeholders. So it has been really positive. There is a need for functioning CCCM clusters outside of shelter cluster. Why? Because there was a huge confusion on what is shelter. And what do we mean by shelter? Everything we built is not a shelter. A shelter is more sheltering cluster, is to look at how people lose their dwelling, how they need sheltering, not to look at evacuation centers specifically. So I think it's really important in Vanuatu to have this separation and not merging like suggested yesterday. Because if you do that, all the discussion will be on evacuation center and all what will happen to all the other households who have not been displaced. Okay. And I think the actual focus of the shelter cluster regarding the resources we have to respond is to really work on building back safer for the overall affected population, not only the people who receive support. Because if we want to support the resilience of Nivan, we need to look on how we could reactivate some knowledge, traditional knowledge on foundation, on bracing, and so on and so on. So okay. It must start from the shelter cluster and after link with long-term issues like training in Vanuatu. And the last things would be the key issues on shelter cluster sustainability for preparedness in Vanuatu. If you compare with other clusters, there is always a line minister, there is a wash minister, there is an health minister, there is an education minister, there is no shelter minister. Shelter in housing comprises a lot of stakeholders. So it's a bit complex in terms of what would be the future of sustainability of the shelter cluster.
Good, Xavier. We'll have to cut you off. That's it. Sorry, but that's exactly why we want to pick up some of those connections with the CCM or the protection group as well. So that's really good. Okay, Ericsson, over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. I'll just go through some of the lessons learned for the WAS cluster. I think first of all, I would like to go through the damages in terms of WAS facilities in the affected areas. We heard very clearly during the minister's speech, Honorable Minister for Climate Change speech during the opening of this workshop, that 68% of the rainwater harvesting systems were damaged. In that 68%, an estimated 1,800 households and 272 community rainwater harvesting systems have been damaged. More than 50 direct gravity flow systems and 12 indirect gravity flow systems, along with around very close to 20 hand pumps, were damaged. In addition to that, almost 70% of the sanitation superstructure were also damaged in the affected areas, and about 80% of people were reported not washing their hands, which actually led to disease incidents in these affected areas. The WAS cluster had a very strong support from the government, with the Department of Geology, Mines and Water Resources being the lead, as well as having the then Honorable Minister for Lands and Natural Resources attending most of the cluster meetings, the WAS cluster meetings. WAS cluster was activated just after cyclone in 2 provinces, one in Sefa and one in Tafea. And I think WAS is the only cluster that was activated in those provinces, and it was very hard, or it becomes very difficult actually to work, since other clusters were not present in those provinces. The response was fully coordinated by the Department of Geology, Mines and Water Resources, with support from implementing partners, has managed to supply safe drinking water to more than 68,000 people. More than 71,000 people have received emergency life-saving water supplies. More than 21,000 people have had their water supply systems repaired. Hygiene messages have been received by almost 120,000 people. And this is largely through community efforts. We also have, through community efforts, we have sanitation situation has returned to pre-pump levels. One of the challenges that we faced is that, or one of the things that we think we should improve on, there are several, but I only have like 4 minutes, so I will only mention like one, is that we still need to be well prepared. For the WAS cluster, we still need to be well prepared so that we can actually reduce the response time. Response time, there's a gap between when the cyclone strike and the response time. We need to reduce the gap so that we can actually respond straight after the cyclone strike. We can actually respond immediately. That is because WAS needs some of the essential needs for life. So it is very important for us to be well prepared so that we can actually respond. We need to respond just after the cyclone strike or any other disaster. I think that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Again, Ericsson's brought up a good point, trying to do provincial scale clusters and doing that without other clusters at that level also, has an impact on doing that. Okay, Viran, please, on overview on health.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody in this 2 days conference. I'm going to outline briefly some of the health lessons learned during cyclone Pam. Firstly, just prior to the cyclone hitting our part of Vanuatu, Sefa and Tawai province, the Ministry of Health activated its response and established an emergency operations center within the Ministry of Health. Because of the sole reason that the purpose of the Ministry of Health is to save lives in terms of disaster response. There were around 10 areas that the Ministry of Health actually provide the response towards. One was an area of nutrition, reproductive health, that's the health of mothers and children. Disease surveillance, ensuring that there's no disease outbreak within that period of disaster. Logistical issues, medical supplies to the health facilities in the islands, and evacuation of injured people to Central Hospital and other health referral facilities. Infrastructure maintenance and maintenance. WAS issues which coincide with the WAS cluster, that's damage water systems in health facilities. Vector control, controlling vectors immediately after cyclones or any other disaster. We have increase in vectors like mosquitoes, so this is one of our areas of response. Foreign medical teams, it is a record that we received 20 plus foreign medical teams coming into Vanuatu at one point in time. Immunization, giving injection to children immediately after the disaster, and information and education communication, which we also did during the post-disaster period. Our responses, we in the health receive around 25 local and international partners. It's a record for the Ministry of Health to have at one point in time 25 organizations flocking in the Ministry of Health to give assistance to the Ministry of Health. 25 local and international organizations, that's NGOs and local NGOs and international organizations. There was a multi-cluster assessment undertaken in 4 worst affected provinces. 71 health facilities were assessed. Out of those 71, 6 health facilities were completely destroyed, which need new ones to be built. 9 health facilities with major damages, and 7 health facilities that are not functioning during the time of disaster. 20 foreign medical teams came in to assist in medical services. First one coming from Israel and United States, and we have dispersed them to many islands in Vanuatu to provide medical assistance. So there were 24 foreign medical teams coming into Vanuatu. That shows that Cyclone primarily put the medical local capacity into a real challenge to accommodate these 7 medical teams coming to the country. We had 75 medical evacuations during the PAM post period. We established 24 early warning systems, places whereby we can detect any likely outbreak of diseases. Normally, we have around only 7 sites around the country. Just immediately after Cyclone PAM, we increased the number from 7 to 24 sentinel sites where we can detect any likely disease outbreak as a result of PAM. Lessons learned. We acknowledge that there were already existing guidelines and procedures in the Ministry of Health, such as SOPs, the Ministry of Health Disaster Management Plan. We already have a database system that we can track which health facilities have been damaged. We already have an established referral system, but that has been stretched to the influx of foreign medical teams. We also learned that partners need to be better linked into the Ministry of Health system to avoid that application. And also, we also realized that human resources is an issue amongst the frontline health staff. In terms of communication, there were communication issues. As you know, that our mandate is to save lives, and if there's communication, then people will lose lives. So there were communication issues, and also issues on information sharing and dissemination. In terms of coordination, we feel that there was still lack of coordination among the 11 groups response areas in the health sector, and especially the coordination of the 24 medical teams that came from foreign medical teams that came from overseas. There was a challenge in coordinating the foreign medical teams.
Okay, all right, that's great. I think really good. Yep, thank you. We're just going to move on. I think, but you actually picked up on a very good point there. Another aspect of civil-military coordination that we didn't think about from in terms of medical. That's exactly what we want to hear about today. Okay, John, could you just give a good bit of a summary on education?
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. What I will be going through this afternoon comes from the education cluster lessons learned. it's this document here. For the education sector, the subsector that was greatly hit is the early childhood and the primary subsector. And that is because of the type of facilities that are provided in those two subsectors. In terms of the education cluster objective, the objective is to ensure all schools in the affected areas are reopened and resumption of learning programs straight after Cyclone Palm strike. To achieve these objectives, the Ministry of Education has worked with the education partners to bring classrooms back into use, allowing children to attend school and provide teaching and learning resources and equipment to allow teachers to teach in learning spaces. They also provide funds to assist community for the Ministry of Education and Training and the education cluster. Schools with minor damage have reopened with resumptions of learning on the 30th of March 2015, and all schools were back to full operation in term 2. Ministry of Education and Training early responses and recovery is possible with the help of partners. IFAD provided an additional support of 191 million grant to Tafea and Seva province primary schools, and Save the Children, UNICEF and other partners supported the schools with tents and temporary learning centers and teaching kids, recreational kids, and they also support psychosocial activities in schools. A few local communities have commenced reconstruction of classroom. For example, you might see in the newspapers, the Mele village community were able to construct 3 classrooms in 3 days. It's also as part of the achievement, we also set up a education reconstruction committee to coordinate, facilitate, and approve all reconstruction in schools in order to make sure that all buildings are built according to building standards in the future. What went well in the education cluster coordination? In terms of logistics, Ministry of Education Logistics worked very well with NDMO Logistics, and we managed to send out education and relief supplies using arranged shipment with NDMO, and also use vehicles allocated to NDMO to transport relief supplies to schools. In terms of coordination, the overall coordination with partners who report to the Ministry of Education and become part of the education cluster went well. We knew who is doing what, where, and when. Ministry of Education were part of the team manning the National Emergency and Operation Center. In terms of what could be improved in terms of coordination, after TCPAM, there are some individuals that are responding directly to schools without informing the Ministry of Education and Training or the education cluster, therefore resulting in duplication of response. In terms of logistics information on transport arrangement, especially shipping arrangements, were not set. The shipping registration forms used for shipment need to be reviewed to suit local context with the shipping industry and also the local hardwares. In terms of assessment, the mission of carrying out assessment must be suitable to meet the needs of the individual sectors. For example, the education assessment was done in schools only due to time and transport constraints provided by assessment coordinator.
Okay.
Most of our damaged schools have been left out in our sectoral reports and humanitarian action plan, and other important documents submitted, because there has not been enough time given to capture the information from these schools.
All right. Thank you, John. It was a good story, and then it changed a bit with some gaps coming back in again. So that's something we can explore a bit more shortly. Okay, finally, Timothy. Yeah, a bit of a breakdown. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, moderator.
Maybe
Thank you. This is the report from the Food Security and Agriculture Cluster. Cluster preparedness before the cyclone. We had in early November, there was a meeting held where we had developed specific responsibilities for the officers manning the cluster, and also our officers were trained to conduct assessment also prior to the cyclone. And with that, we also developed our assessment forms beforehand. We also released some SMS messaging prior to the cyclone as part of the cyclone preparedness. And that reached out to around 120,000 people in all provinces. Now, leading up to the TC-PAM itself on 13th of March, on 9th of March, the cluster met to agree on preparedness information to be dished out once the cyclone struck. And key messages were also put out on the radio and also during discussions when officers went out to conduct field meetings with communities. In the immediate aftermath of the cyclone, the cluster what was put into operational on day one, and immediately on Monday following the cyclone, there was the first cluster meeting held. And experts from the agriculture sector determined that there would be enough food to last the affected communities for 3 to 4 weeks. But even so, the cluster was determined to put out its first push of food, and this was done, the first distribution of food was done by April the 1st, and that is 2.5 weeks after the cyclone struck. The first round of food distribution was done mainly to the shepherds and to the Efate offshore islands. Even with having put out food to those mainly to those 2 islands, we also had officers who brought in food from other less affected islands, especially from the Sanma province, which helped to relieve food issues, especially on Efate. We had shipments of food that were brought to communities here, and they were sold at the local food market outlets. Now, with those activities that were going on, we discovered a lot of innovations to improve food security within the food cluster and agriculture, within the food security and agriculture cluster. So those innovations were that parts of Vanuatu were it's less affected, it is possible to ship food from those less affected areas to affected areas so that you can at least start minimizing the demands on food and waiting for food coming in from outside. Another innovation that was done is looking at distributing day-old chicks to selected communities, and especially on Pele, we distributed day-old chicks to households on Pele with enough ration to feed them for 6 weeks so that they could reach an age where you can get them to supplement your protein intake. We also put out 20 metric tons of fish sold in several market outlets in Port Vila at subsidized prices. The successes from the cluster group were that there was rapid distribution of food during the first round, and there was proactive government ownership of the whole program and control, especially with other stakeholders coming in, i.e. NGOs and other groups. We distributed a total of 3,174 metric tons of food, especially to Tafea, Shefa, and some islands in Malampa and Penama. We also distributed a lot of agricultural tools. About 38 metric tons of that went out to about nearly 85,000 people. And the use of SMS helped us a lot in passing information to affected communities.
Okay.
We also did some inside assessment, and we conducted lessons learned workshop on the 13th of May, that's 2 months exactly after the cyclone, to revisit what we had done in those 2 months since the cyclone.
Good.
And there was a lot of active collaboration that we found out between government, NGO, and private sector, even business individuals in Port Vila and those who are coming abroad to help. Challenges that we face, there was a lot of food distribution which was done, but we found out that the Ministry of Agriculture is not tasked specifically to be a food distributing institution. It is rather a food or a production. It helps with assisting farmers to produce food, not to distribute food. So it was a difficulty that we face coming in to play another part to distribute food.
Okay.
The paper-based data collection was something that was cumbersome in terms of having to get all those data, translate them into useful forms for us to utilize.
Okay.
Moderator, we also had a lot of people who came in to try and hijack our program, and i.e. a particular group, the GMO group, who tried coming in to try and hijack our food distribution program. But we managed the situation using our internal systems to ensure that our program was not hijacked by such people who came in to try and promote their own agendas.
Okay.
Things for the future activities. The MAF is in the process of establishing a risk resilience unit within the ministry to address future needs that arises, and also developing procedural systems so that we are better informed and better coordinated to meet future.
Okay. Good. Thank you very much, Timothy. Again, brought up some interesting coordination aspects. You're not a distribution, you haven't got those distribution capacities. And then again, an aspect with data assessment as well. We're just conscious of time, but we'll kick off with some questions. So I'm just going to put it back to the panel, see if there's, from any of the sectors here, if there was a particular area working with one or two of the other clusters that could have been done better, or was something that really surprised you that came out really well? I'll just open it to the panel if there is any examples.
Moderator, from experiences that we came across, especially with food distribution, we had some difficulties with the logistics of food that were distributed to the islands, whereby we had prepared everything to dispatch, and there was the information between the logistics group and the food cluster did not work out so well, and so foods that were prepared were not distributed according to the time that we had anticipated. It's something that this forum needs to address for future incidences that we face, such as the TC PAM one.
Okay, good, thanks. I've got a question for the health department. I just wanted to know, how did you share community health indicator data, with other clusters? And if you did that, did you share it with the WASH cluster?
Yeah, I think that is one of my question also. In terms of, especially on WASH data information, we're trying to see how we can better coordinate information between the health and WASH cluster on issues of damage other systems within the health facilities. These are some of the issues. As we know that WASH is responsible for water issues, WASH issues, and also it's our concern because it's in the health facility. So addressing it is an issue on where do we draw the line of responsibility between health and WASH in terms of damage water systems in health facilities.
Good. Yes, Eric.
Yeah, thank you very much. I just want to add on. I think for this tropical cyclone PAM, we actually learned a lot of lessons. And one of them is how clusters should work or collaborate with each other. This can only be done during peacetime. At this time, with these responses, we have no time really to talk about how we should collaborate, but this is something that we should be doing. In terms of working in collaboration, we actually have WASH representatives in the health cluster meetings, as well as education cluster meetings. We also have their representatives in our meetings. That's in terms of sharing information. We also have some information in WASH in schools, as well as WASH in health facilities. So this shows that we have some form of collaboration, but we still need to strengthen this.
Good.
Thank you.
Any cluster had a bit of frustration with another cluster and then finally sorted it out? Maybe you can tell us how you sorted that frustration out, or did that come up, or any examples how you worked through that?
Is it to me?
I'm just up to the panel.
Yeah. We really don't have that much of issues with other clusters.
Okay.
Sometimes it takes time.
Yep.
It takes time. If we request information from one cluster, it will take time before we can actually get the information back to us. That's why I was saying we should be in a maybe this should be done, like the collaboration can be strengthened during peacetime.
Yep.
We'll see how we should work together.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. All right. I'll open the questions to the one more.
So I have one question for I think all of us. Okay. I mean, it will be really good to share our experiences during the assessment periods, because these assessment periods are very crucial in terms of how we respond to the communities. I know that most of the assessments were done in selected sites only in the area councils. do we have other forms or other methods or maybe tools that we use like for other clusters? How do we do assessments in those other sites? What methods or what other tools that we use? If we can share that with each other.
Okay, that's good. Yeah.
Yeah, to respond to this aspect, now it's now 6 years that the shelter cluster at global level has a partnership with REACH initiative, and this is a methodology to assess. As they came here and do an assessment from 13 April to 1st May, and this it was a sampling methodology assessment, and it goes to all the islands, and included primarily shelter components, but also other cluster issues. For example, what is the level of water harvesting system needs in the response? So I think it has been a great tool because discussed with a few clusters, presented to them, and comments were included in the last final report. I think it's a good way to see how an assessment could be done by one clusters, but also in coordination with others.
It's a good example there. All right, we'll take a few questions from the floor as well. So anyone got any questions? Okay. Mark?
Yeah, just one question for all the panelists. We've come out of the emergency and there's a lot of lessons learned that you've identified on a cluster level and what we've done for the last 2 days here. For the next emergency, what do we need to do as an entire community in terms of cluster coordination to ensure that we have the capacities in-house on your level and your entire team and all the different areas within the cluster, from health logistics to education information management to linkages with the education information management systems that's under regular programming. So is there any requests that you have that we as an entire community can link in to support future cluster coordination in the next emergency?
Yeah, probably I'll give it a try first and then my colleagues will follow on. I think we've considered that in the health cluster on how to address the better future disasters like this magnitude Category 5 PAM. We know that we've learned a lot of lessons which we've never experienced before. So this gives us a clear idea on what we're going to do in the future in terms of response. And we have already identified in the health sector response strategic plan that Ministry of Health need to sit down and come up with a very clear Ministry of Health disaster plan that takes in all the lessons learned from this cyclone PAM, so that it can be used to address the next, probably the next possible Category 5 cyclones. So we feel that it is an eye-opener to us, and we've known a lot of our gaps and loopholes, so that we can better address it in a proper, documented disaster plan with exercises and drills in real scenarios, so that Ministry of Health can be better prepared to address the possible disaster scenes in the future.
Okay, Tim.
I'll just give you some support. Yeah.
Sorry, Tim was next first. Got to do some moderating here.
Thank you. Just briefly, I think the TCPAM really highlighted the need to really revisit a disaster management act. The way it is set up, it has put us on the spotlight to see areas where we could improve on for better coordination of these different clusters, different ministries, so that in future, each ministry or each department that is affiliated to different clusters have very clearly defined roles to play in managing such a disaster. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Another question from the floor. Yep, Peter.
My question I'll direct to the agriculture clusters for food. I've noticed that during this distribution, we have concentrated on 3 types of food, which is noodles, rice, and tin. I was in one of the island, and they have some surplus of some local starch where they can give it to other areas which are more vulnerable. So I actually went and meet our experts, those who were responsible for food distribution, and I told them if they can look at the options to get those starch from other parts of the islands and feed the other islands which are more vulnerable. And what they told me is they don't have any sort of Russian standard to capture these local foods. So can we, in the future, have some sort of scales or Russian standard where we can also include the local crops, if it's possible? Or do we have one under the health and nutrition so that we can use it? People can always balance the diet. My second question to all of you, all the clusters, it's good to hear that the health cluster have their own contingency fund. So how can we improve other ministries as well, or other clusters to have their own emergency contingency fund, so that we can link up to the overall government budget where we can help do response faster, rather than just depending on one particular fund, which is may not sufficient enough to accumulate a faster response. Thank you.
Okay. Keep short answers, but
So probably health, our mandate is in health is always emergencies. This one of our priority is it's a routine work, it's addressing emergencies, so we always have fund for emergencies. So if there's an emergency in Dana, we need to have the fund to get charter flight to Dana to get an emergency. That is one of our role, especially for operational. But we don't have specific budget for disaster issues. So that is our weakness. We don't have specific budget for disaster like PAM, but we have disaster, but we have emergency fund for normal Ministry of Health routine response to any emergency that happens in an island. So I think I've clarified me that we don't have Ministry of Health fund specifically for disasters, but only for emergency in terms of what we do as a health ministry.
okay. Just one more response from the panel. That'll have to be it.
I think on this, the response would be to have an inter-cluster contingency planning. I think it's really important that not each cluster develops their own contingency planning, but in GMO somehow have a real exercise with inclusion of all the clusters to be sure that the contingency planning will include inter-cluster cross-cutting issues, and that all clusters will know what is the contingency planning of another cluster, to be sure there will be no duplication. And second response would be, we did all lesson learned exercise. But the question is what we do with this lesson learned. What is our management response plan to be sure that all things discussed here and during all the other cluster are analyzed and there is collective response to this lesson learned. Because if we just do lesson learned and close the shop, there will be no change next time. So I think it's important. What do we do collectively about what we discussed these 2 days and all the last week at all clusters to ensure that key recommendation and key action could be put in motion to ensure that disaster response would be better.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. Okay, I'd like everyone to join me in applause for our panel today. They've done a great job. Well done, guys. All the lessons learned will be all the documents will be put onto the Vanuatu humanitarian response website. So they're progressively putting on there. So look at those. And above all, I just want to also thank you as an audience as well for a very a good discussion and picking up a lot of other aspects as well today. So thank you as well. Okay, that's it. Who's, let me see, taking over? Take over? Okay. You want me to introduce it? All right. We'll now move on to our second last session, which is our open mic session. So I'd like to invite Director General Jotham Napat to the panel. Director Benjamin Ching from DESPAC, Shadrach as well from NDMO, and Sebastian from OCHA. So if you could please join the panel in an open half an hour open mic session, please. You got some?
Oh, there's some juice. They should be sitting in the center. Okay. They're sitting in the center.
Okay.
Taliban.